Hello everyone, my name is John with Macomb St.Clair Michigan Works, and today we're going to be doing a virtual workshop on resume design from application to follow-up. We'll be covering not only resumes but also cover letters, thank you letters, and references as well. So let's get started. So when it comes to resumes, a couple things you need to remember. It's the little things that matter. From someone who looks at a lot of resumes every day, if you've got something as simple as a little misspelling, or your bullets are not aligned correctly, or you've got too many different fonts on your resume, those types of things can get you put into the shred pile. So you want to make sure that you proof that resume yourself, but also give it to others. Let them look at it. Get another professional's opinion, okay? Read it out loud. You won't believe how many different types of things you can find by just reading it out loud to yourself. A resume needs focus. And what do we mean by that? Well, you don't want someone to look at your resume, read the whole thing, and at the end of it say, I have no idea what this person wants to do or what type of work they want to get into. So your resume needs to be focused for the position you're applying for. So when we say that you're never truly done with your resume, you aren't, because you're changing it for every job you apply to. Let's say that you're applying for an IT job and all your work experience is in warehousing, and you use up 2/3 of your resume just to talk about all your warehousing and logistics experience. Well, if an employer gets that, they're going to think you want to work in warehousing still. So you need to make your resume overtly all about IT, okay? Different operating systems you've worked with, hardware, coding languages, that type of stuff is what you'd want to put on your resume, and not focus so much on your warehouse experience. When an employer looks at a resume, they're going to look at that compared to their job posting and see, how does this candidate fit what we're looking for? So you want to make sure you take that job posting, print it off, highlight the things you've done, whether it's in your at school working, or on the job experience, or in your pastime IT experience that you have, and figure out a way to put that in an eloquent way on your resume to illustrate to the reader that you're a qualified candidate for the position. This next slide is very interesting. We like to show this to our job seekers because it shows them that your resume is getting about 6 seconds of eye time before the reader is making their decision about you. So this was a very interesting study done by a website called The Ladders, and they took HR professionals and gave them these goggles that would track where their eyes went on a resume. And the results are very telling. You can see that from this image, this resume was scanned, and the darker spots are where they actually focused in on. So the very first job this person had, or I should say their last job, the reader focused in on that quite a bit. Then you can see they lose themselves in a lot of text. Then towards the bottom, they focused on the education and they moved on. So when you're tailoring your resume, you want to make sure that you're leading with your best foot forward, okay? You want to take your best, the best stuff you have, your best skills, and try and put it on that top third of your resume, because that's getting looked at first and you're only getting about 6 seconds of eye time. Here's another example of a resume that gets scanned. You can see that they focus on that top portion, and then all of a sudden they get lost and they lose interest in this resume. Now this one in particular has a lot of text to it, and a lot of text to a reader, to anybody who's trying to scan a document for keywords, can be a little bit intimidating, okay, or off-putting. And they don't want to spend all their time reading. They want to see what they need real quick in maybe a bullet layout and make a decision on that person. Before we really delve into resumes, we think it's important to do a brief history about resumes to understand where we have come from to this point. So in 1482, the very first resume was written by Leonardo da Vinci. By the 1940s, resumes would include your weight, age, height, marital status, and religion. Hopefully none of you have that on your resume currently. By the 70s, typewriters and word processors allowed people to make their resumes more professional and salesy. By 94, the World Wide Web has gone public, and Monster and Career Builder are the big ones on the scene where people are uploading their resumes. By 2007, video resumes have hit YouTube. Video resumes are still being used today. If you've got some time, please go online, Google it, take a look, see see what people are putting out there. This is just another way to promote yourself as a candidate. It's outside the box, not a ton of people are doing it, and all you need is a good camera, which we all have in our cell phones, and some decent lighting, and anyone can shoot their own video resume. By 2008, objectives are officially out. So we don't want to see objectives anymore on resumes, because objectives do one thing. They talk about what you want to get out of the job, not what you can offer the employer. So what we're seeing a lot of now, and what we are implementing here with our agency, are summaries and position statements. Today, resumes can contain social media links. So if you have your work somewhere online, you can put the link to how to access that. They're shorter, more visual with multimedia. Infographics are really trending right now as well. If you're in that kind of field that allows for creativity, then I'd recommend trying to do more of an infographic resume that has a little bit more color to it. So what is a resume? We get this question all the time, what do I need to have on my resume to promote myself? And we're going to go through that right now. We get this question, how many pages should my resume be? So there's never going to be a definitive answer on this. We get this question all the time. Depends on what you're going into, okay? If you know that this employer is looking for someone who has a ton of skills and has been doing it for a couple decades, then you're going to want a long resume, okay? A very detailed resume. For instance, USA Jobs. Those types of resumes are a completely different beast, and those need to be as long as possible and as detailed as possible. Our philosophy here at Michigan Works, if your resume is going to go in front of an individual, then you want to keep that to about 1 or 2 pages, because they're doing that 6 seconds of scanning to look to see if it's valuable enough of a document to bring you in for an interview. Can we use color on a resume? The answer to that is yes and no. I mean, do your research on the company. What do they like? What do they look for? Are they the type of company that's a little bit more outgoing and loves that type of stuff? Or are they more of a conservative company, just wants kind of black and white, just details and numbers? Is a resume really that important? A lot of things have changed with the job market today, but one thing that has not gone away is the resume. It is still an essential part of your of promoting yourself, is having a resume. They look different than they used to, but you still need to have that document, because the first thing people ask when they find out you're looking for work is, well, do you have a resume you can give me, right? So that document is still very important. What do employers want to see on the resume? They want to see the connection of how you fit within their company. That's what they're looking for. They want to see that you've taken the time to tailor your resume to fit their job description, and not just used a generic resume that is not tailored to them, that you have just thrown out there to dozens and hundreds of different employers. So they're looking for a tailored resume that speaks to them and shows your skills and what you can offer them as an employee. We want to dive into the 3 different types of resumes now. So the first type of resume is a chronological. Some points in favor for a chronological: they're very easy to scan your work history. So if you know that is a major selling point for you as a candidate, then perhaps a chronological resume is what you want to use. They're preferred by the internet. So if you're doing an online application where you're uploading your resume, and that resume is then populating a job application, then you want to use a chronological resume, more specifically a plain text, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Chronologicals are great for those who are showing steady work history. So if that's a major thing that employer is looking for, that you've been working steadily in this field, then a chronological is going to do that. It highlights your recent experience. Now, some points against a chronological: age, right? There's a lot of people out there who are concerned about age discrimination. So we here at Michigan Works will typically tell them not to use a chronological resume if that's the case, because a major portion of your resume is going to be eaten up by chronological work history, which is going to show your age, right? So we're not going to want to use that type of resume for you. Age discrimination is absolutely, something that our job seekers face every day. So we need to find different ways to promote our candidates who are worried about those types of things. A chronological resume can also be fairly redundant. So let's say you've worked as a nurse assistant for the past 15 years and you've had, I don't know, 5 or 6 different jobs in that field. If you've been doing the same tasks at every job that you were at, then you're just repeating yourself over and over again if you go with this chronological layout. Here is what a chronological resume looks like. You've got the name of the job seeker at the top, the job title. We always recommend doing this for all our job seekers. We tell them this. If you're applying for an operations manager position, then put operations manager right at the top of your resume. So now you're speaking to the employer and telling them you are exactly who they are looking for. You've got a career profile there, and as you scan down, you can see the work history eats up a good chunk of that resume and goes into detail what they've done at each position. Job title, company, dates, and location. Moving on to a functional resume. Some points in favor for a functional. A functional resume highlights your skills. That is what it focuses on. They're great if you have good skills along with gaps in your work experience. So we see this a lot, right? People have taken time off from working to care for an elder parent or for their children, or they were laid off and they've got gaps and they're worried about it. Well, a chronological isn't a good resume to use for you. A functional would be more fitting. It's definitely beneficial for older workers worried about that age discrimination because it doesn't focus on where you've previously worked as much as what tangible skills you can bring to the table right now. They're great for those who are looking for a career change because, again, it's not focusing on what you did in the past, but it's looking at what you can currently offer an employer. Some points against a functional can sometimes look like you're hiding something, which sort of is the case with a functional, right? We're trying to not highlight other things because there's some gaps or there's inconsistent work history, and we're focusing on your skills you can offer right now. Now here's an example of a functional resume. You can see we still have the name right at the top, the job title, the career profile, but then we go right into the skills. And this individual lists production manager, spreadsheets and reports, decision making, crisis management, Microsoft Office. Below that, he has more detailed bullets that go into their work experience that they've done. Directed daily operations of 50 hourly employees, directly responsible for private label candy and vending machine sandwich inventory, including but not limited to receipt and shipment. He's got his honors and affiliations there, education. Over to the left, you see that dark blue sidebar, which is really catching to the eye when you look at it, right? And he's got some soft skills over there. Self-starter, leadership, accountability, quick learner. And then down at the very bottom is the work history. So you can see with this layout of a resume with a functional, it doesn't focus on that work history a whole lot. Now, moving on to a combination. Points in favor for a combination. So a combination obviously is a chronological functional kind of put together. It highlights both your skills and your experience. It shows your older skills. It's great for tailoring a resume, and it helps to address those gaps. It's also good for those looking for a career change. Now, some points against a combination. Some employers don't like the format. Some employers are very rigid and they want a chronological. Okay? So in that case, you got to do your research on the company and figure out what type of resume they might prefer. So here's an example of a combination. Again, name at the top, career profile, and it goes right into the work history. The difference here is on the left-hand side, we've got that sidebar that shows all the other skills that they have as well. So if you don't want to read through all that work history and you want to just do a quick scan, you can look right over there and read through some of those skills that they have. I want to talk now about a plain text resume. I mentioned this a little bit earlier and how you use a plain text resume or how you can make one. So a plain text resume is a resume that is void of any color, any fancy fonts, any borders, any text boxes, any tables, anything like that. Okay, it's very black and white, very boring, and it's meant to be that way. It's essentially a chronological resume. Now, what's great about Microsoft Word is within Word, you can click convert to a plain text resume and the software program will do it for you. Now, there might be some issues when you convert it to a plain text resume. So why do we need a plain text resume? If you come across an online application, I'm sure you all have before, where it says upload your resume, oftentimes when you upload that resume, it's going to parse it out, okay? The software program is going to look at it for keywords. And those keywords, it's going to generate a report almost that will give that to the employer and tell them how much of a match you are for the position. What it can also do is it'll populate that application for you. So what that means is that's less time for you entering in every job you worked at, all your skills, the addresses, the phone numbers, all that stuff that you have to type in manually. You won't have to do that if you can upload a plain text resume, because it'll do the work for you. It's great for your online applications. I did mention when you convert your chronological to a plain text, it's not always going to do it cleanly, so you have to go through it again and make sure that everything's lined up where it needs to be, and your work history is under the work history category, and so on and so forth. So here's an example of what one looks like. Like I mentioned earlier, it's very boring, but it's got everything you need there, okay? That's just another tool you can utilize as you're out there online job searching. Now I want to go through resumes top to bottom. Name. Do all your names match? Okay, some of us go by our full birth name, others go by nicknames, and we have our names out there on the web on all different platforms. So you might go by William on LinkedIn, but on Facebook you're Bill, or you might go by Junior here, but no Junior there. So you want to make sure that your name matches on all these different profiles that you have online. You want consistency. Now, what do you do if your name is too common? Well, there's a couple different things you can do. First, Google yourself and see what comes up. If someone else with the same name as you with a not so great past shows up, that's going to be really bad for you, right? Because the first thing employers do when they're looking at candidates is they Google search them. They see what's out there about that person. And if there's nothing out there but bad information about someone else, you don't want them accidentally mixing you up with someone else. So what you can do, you can add a middle initial to your name. You can maybe write your full name in there if you've always been going by Bill. Maybe you want to go by William now as you're going out there in the job market, or Junior, or the second. Add that to your name and make sure it matches on all these different platforms that you're on. You want to differentiate yourself from all the other people with the same name. Believe it or not, we've had people come into our Michigan Work Centers with resumes that didn't even have names on them. So again, make sure you are proofreading these resumes because you don't want to miss something. Your address. We get this question often, do I put my full street address on my resume, or do I just put city, state, and zip? And our answer to that is, identity theft is a real thing out there, so less information you put out there about yourself, the better. And employers don't need to know your full street address. They're not going to mail you a letter to come in for an interview, right? They're going to email you, they're going to call you, or they're going to text you. So our suggestion to you here is city, state, and zip. That's all you need to put on there. The employer just wants to have an idea of how far you're commuting from. Now, what if you're applying for a job that's, hours away? Do I put the city that I live in right now? And my answer to that would most likely be no, because if I'm applying for a job in Grand Rapids and I put Macomb County down as where I'm living, that employer is going to see that I'm living in Macomb County, and it's going to raise that red flag we talked about, right? How are they going to get here every day? That's a pretty long commute. Now, if you know that if you get that job, you're going to move to Grand Rapids, then what I'd suggest doing is putting Grand Rapids down there as your address, okay? Phones. This is a fun topic we have with a lot of people. Too many numbers on a resume can be a bad thing. So oftentimes we see individuals who have both a home number and a cell number on their resume. And the reason why we're going to suggest you put just one number on there is because you don't want them calling your home number when you're out grocery shopping. Then they leave you a voicemail. When you get home that night, you call them back, but they're not at the office. Now you're playing phone tag. And HR professionals don't have time for this. They're going to move on to the next candidate. So what we suggest doing is just putting your cell on there, take your cell off vibrate, keep it on you at all times, and make sure when you're answering that phone, you're answering it professionally and not like it's a telemarketer calling you. Because you don't want an HR individual giving you a ring and you're a little bit hostile when you pick up the phone, right? With cell phones, you want to make sure that your voicemail is professional. We've checked so many people's voicemails where it's either the standard robot sound that your carrier gives you, or it's just your first name, last name, or it's you don't have a voicemail at all, or it's full, or it's your grandchildren leaving your voice message. You want to make sure that you clear your voicemail box first. I know with my cell phone, it doesn't tell me when the voicemail is full, and the only way I find out is when someone calls me and can't leave me a voicemail. So make sure you're clearing your voicemail box. Have a professional voicemail on there. So, hello, you've reached John. I'm not here right now. Please leave your name and number after the beep, and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Something as simple as that, just to reassure the caller that they're reaching the individual that they intended to, okay? Ringback tones are things we've heard before, so you want to make sure you don't have anything like that. No cute voicemails. Keep it as professional as possible. Email. You think this would be a simple thing. I just need to put my email address on my resume. But you need to look at it a little bit more and make sure that you're promoting yourself as best as possible. Here's an example of an email. What do you think is wrong with this one? Carol Baines 56 at yahoo.com. I see that 56 and I think date of birth. I think date of birth, and now I'm doing math in my head and I'm figuring out how old Carol Baines is. You do not want to give an employer an opportunity to discriminate against you based on your age without them ever having even met you. So don't put your date of birth within your email address. OhioStateFan@gmail.com. There's a lot wrong with this, right? Here we are Michigan State fans. So I'm not saying someone's going to make a decision based on what team you root for, but if someone isn't a huge fan of Ohio State and they see that, you know, that could be off-putting to them. You could lose opportunities when you turn your email address into a polarizing topic. So we'd tell you to highly avoid something like this. James Tilley at AOL.com. How many people use AOL anymore? That was one of the first email providers out there. If you still have an AOL account, we would highly suggest you create a Gmail or a Yahoo. Another suggestion to you when it comes to your email addresses is create an email account just for job seeking. Make it your first name and last name if it's available. If you have to put some numbers afterwards, just don't put your date of birth, okay? Because I know when I check my email, I get hundreds of emails a day. And if an employer is trying to contact me, I could easily lose that email when it comes in my inbox. So create a brand new one just for job seeking. Tie it to all your accounts, to your LinkedIn, to your Monster, Indeed, all of those that you use. That way, when you log into it, it's not going to be populated with Groupon emails and all different types of promotional stuff. Another trick, email your resume to yourself. Oftentimes, opportunities come to us when we're out in a social environment, right? You start a dialogue with someone, they find out you're looking for work, turns out they have someone who they think would love to see your resume. You don't want to have to wait until you get home, turn on the desktop to send the resume out to them. So email your finished resume to yourself. So you can just pull up your smartphone and send it to them right then and there. You know, keep the ball moving. Don't be the slow job seeker. Be the proactive one, the one that goes above and beyond, and have that resume readily available to give to someone who could have an opportunity for you. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a wonderful tool to use for networking to find other jobs. And if you want to find out more about LinkedIn, I would recommend watching some of our other virtual workshops on social media and creating LinkedIn accounts. Now, if you do not have a 100% finished LinkedIn account, our recommendation is not to put it on your resume yet. Don't put it on your resume until it is 100% finished. So, we see this type of thing a lot. People will just put LinkedIn and then their name. Well, that's not the correct way to put LinkedIn on your resume. Every LinkedIn user has a URL address, okay? And it typically looks something like this with a bunch of alphanumeric characters at the end. What's great about LinkedIn, they have this feature where you can actually edit your public profile and URL address. You want to click on that and you want to change it to just your first name and last name if it's not already taken, okay? That way, if someone's typing that into a web browser, they're most likely not going to make a mistake with something as simple as that. Moving on to your career summary on your resume. So this is an example of a good career summary. A highly organized and detail-oriented executive assistant with over 10 years experience providing thorough and skillful administrative support to senior executives. Now, a wrong way, and this is obviously a very wrong way to write a career summary. This is more of an objective, but seeking a job as a mattress tester because I like sleeping and can quickly fall asleep anywhere. Obviously, polar opposites. We don't see too many of those come through our doors, but the one in red there reads just like an objective. It is all about what that job seeker can get out of the job and not what they can offer the employer. So here's another example. Certified nurse assistant with 2 years of experience confidently handled a caseload of 8 to 10 patients while exceeding expectations of supervisors and management. Maintain a customer satisfaction rate of 95%. That tells me what type of work they do, how long they've been doing it, what type of workload they have, and it gives me some metrics there, right? Some quantifiable information. The wrong way to write one, I want a fun, stimulating job that pays me in mountains of money every month and 50 days of paid vacation and a gym membership available for part-time or full-time, depending on how I feel that morning. Okay? Obviously a polar opposite, but a very self-serving objective as opposed to a career summary. Quantifiable information. This is an important aspect of your resume because it's typically the thing that is read the most when it's being scanned by anybody looking at a resume. They look for numbers, right? They look for information that's going to paint a picture. So, the wrong way to list a skill on your resume would be something as simple as this. I ran an assembly line. Doesn't tell the reader a whole lot, okay? You need to expound on this quite a bit more because there's all different types of assembly lines, all different types of products. We need to have a little bit more detail with this. So, the correct way to write it. Experience working on an assembly line producing over 120 parts per hour while meeting 99% efficiency. What we recommend to our job seekers when they're just getting writer's block with their resumes is to write down everything they did at their last job. Because oftentimes we can be our own worst enemy and we oversimplify things, right? I did this at my last job. Well, you may have done that, but you also helped out in this department and that department. You helped to improve some processes. You helped to save the company money. There's so much more. So if you just take a pen or pencil and just start writing down everything you've ever did, you'll be surprised at how many things you can come up with. Developed an inventory spreadsheet. Doesn't tell me a ton, right? No, you created an inventory control spreadsheet that ended up being utilized across 5 of the national offices to ensure efficiency and accuracy of incoming inventory. Work history. This is a topic that gets debated quite a bit in our workshops. Multiple positions at one company, what do you do? Well, there's lots of different ways you can lay out your work history, and it really depends on how much room you got left on it, right? Or what is the biggest selling point for you as a candidate. So if you've worked one job for the past 30 years, you can just list that last job, past 30 years, and then list the position you held most recently prior to leaving that company. Or if you've worked multiple positions within that company and worked your way up, you can list it that way. You can list XYZ company, I started out in the mailroom, and then at XYZ company, I moved up to so-and-so's assistant, and then I moved up to, regional sales director, and then I moved up to, supervisor, that type of thing. Showing a progression in your work history. A common thing we tell our job seekers is you're more employable when you are employed. If I have 3 candidates in front of me, one's been laid off for 2 months, one's been laid off for 8 months, and one is currently working somewhere, most likely I'm going to take my chance on the one who's currently employed because I know what they're doing. I know that they're currently waking up every day, they're going to work, they're meeting the expectations of their employer, and they're showing that they're valuable. Now, the other individuals are currently laid off. I don't know what they're really doing unless they paint that picture for me of what they've been doing with their downtime. Maybe they went back to school. Maybe they're taking care of a family member. Maybe they're doing volunteer work, something like that. And we're going to delve a little bit more into that of how you can address some of those gaps in employment. But what we mean by you're more employable when you're employed is employers would rather steal someone from another company than take a chance on someone who has been laid off for quite some time. Common question here. What do I do if it was a staffing agency or it was contract? As long as you make it clear to the reader, it's not an issue. Companies understand that if you work for a staffing company, you're there for a certain period of time. Or if you're there on a contract, you complete the task and then you move on to another company. So if you've worked for GM, but not directly for them, let's say you were working through a staffing agency, then maybe list the staffing agency as your employer, because that's who your paycheck comes from. And in parentheses right next to that, you can put the location, GM, and I worked as this under contract for 7 months. Project ended, and I moved on to another job. You know, you can put that in the details or the bullets underneath that job description. How far back do I go with my work history? Very common question. We see a lot of individuals asking this question. They're coming in with resumes that go back 30 and 40 years. And our philosophy here at Macomb St.Clair Michigan Works, try not to go back more than 10 years if you can avoid it, okay? Now there's exceptions to every rule. If the best skills you have go back, are from a job 15 years ago, and those skills are gonna help you land the next job, then okay, you can go back a little bit farther. But typically not too many jobs are going to be looking for more than 10 years of experience. And you don't want to be listing jobs on there that go back to the 90s and the 80s, okay? You want to keep your experience as fresh as possible. Very common question here. I have gaps on my resume. What do I do about my gaps? We rectify this often by just having a conversation with the job seeker. Well, what were you doing? Were you literally just sitting on the couch for the past 9 months? Well, no, I was collecting unemployment, and then I went back to school, and I was raising my kids, and I was volunteering here, and all that stuff can be put on a resume. Oftentimes people think a resume needs to be just work history, just information about stuff I got paid for, and that's not the case. Your resume is about what you can offer the company. So if that's volunteer work you can offer, fine, put that on there, okay? If you want to put down you were an at-home caregiver for an ailing parent or something like that, you can put that on your resume. You can put it under work history. We probably wouldn't call it work history. Then we would take some creative liberty, right? We would change that to say just experience on your resume. So then you can list all the jobs you got paid for, and then there's that 10 months that you were at home caring for an ailing parent, and then go right on to your next job. What you don't want are gaps, because that's the kiss of death. If I see a gap on a resume, my mind starts wandering, what was that person really doing? So you don't want those red flags raised. You want to give a clear picture to the reader of what it is you're capable of doing and where you've been for the past 10 years, okay? Education on a resume. You got to ask yourself this question: is it relevant to the job? Is my master's degree required for this position I'm applying for at Lowe's? Probably not. So then why would I put my master's degree on there? If it's not going to help me land that job, I'm not going to put it on there. And overqualified candidates are a real thing, okay? We see that quite a bit with companies that choose not to take a chance on someone because they're overeducated. Now, it doesn't mean they can't do the job, it means they can do it, but then the question to the employer is, are they going to leave when they find that job that they really want? You know, they have an IT background and this job isn't in IT. The moment they find that IT job, are they going to leave? A company doesn't want to keep reposting jobs and reposting. You know, it's a big task for HR teams to post the jobs on their website, put them on Indeed, all these other websites, call people, set up interviews, background checks, reference checks. I mean, it's a lot of work. Companies want retention. They want someone who's going to stay there for a long period of time so they don't have to keep posting these jobs. So you have to ask yourself, is this education going to help me get this job, or is it going to be looked at as a possible hindrance to me getting this job? Maybe it can show you can't complete things. I see a lot of resumes that have education on there that's not finished. A bachelor's degree without a graduation date on it, for instance. If you didn't finish, then don't put it on there. Because to the reader, it looks like you can't finish things. And we all don't finish, I see a lot of people who don't finish their education, and they have legitimate reasons why they didn't, right? Things happen in their personal life that they can't focus on education at this time. So they have to drop out of school. So it just looks bad to have that on a resume. So leave it off. And you can do different types of resumes. If you've always wanted to break into this field and your education will help promote you for that job, then have one resume with your master's on it. But if you want to get a job just right now, just to get by, then create another resume that doesn't have all that education on it. So, like I said earlier, you're never really done with your resume. You're always changing it. It can possibly be seen as a barrier. Going back to our warehouse example that we used, if I'm hiring a warehouse individual and he's got a ton of IT education on here and he just graduated, and now I'm hiring him to do warehousing, which are two different fields, is this person really going to be doing their job when they're here, or are they going to be on their laptop doing their online coursework? Are they going to be leaving early because they got an exam or something? You got to think about these things. Is that IT education really going to help me get this warehousing job? If it's not, then leave it off. Common question, should I include my high school on my resume? We have a youth program here at Michigan Works, and I've talked with some of those career planners, and they advise their candidates to put their education on there, their high school education, because they're recent graduates, right? And the skills they learned in school will help them get the next job. They've got extracurricular activities and things they can put on there as well. But a 47-year-old woman, I wouldn't tell her to put her high school diploma on her resume. It's not needed. That's just eating up space we can use for something more relevant. So the correct way to put your education on your resume, Michigan State University, Bachelor's of Science, Engineering. The wrong way, Macomb Community College, general or some classes. One tells me the degree where you got it, the other one tells me the school you went to but that you didn't finish. So you can see how that can be a red flag, right, to an employer. Certifications. Certifications show you are relevant and valuable to hire. You want to make sure that your certifications are current. You don't want to put an expired certification on your resume. Are they relevant to the job? Are these certifications going to help me get this job, or are they going to be one of those red flags that jumps out to an employer? You want to make sure you include the proper title and issuing party. So for instance, CPR, American Red Cross current, tells me where they got it, what it is, and that it's current. The wrong way, we see things like this, just CPR. So you want to put a little bit more information on here. Volunteering. Is it relevant to the job? Where should I put it? Well, you put it in its own section if it's unrelated to the job, or under the experience category of your resume if it's in the field related to what you're applying to. When should you include volunteering on a resume? It's great for new graduates, so if you don't have a ton of experience, start volunteering right now. Those changing careers or those returning to the workforce who've been gone for a while. Use caution if the volunteering is political or religious. You don't want to put a political party on your resume because that instantly knocks out half the companies that you're applying to, okay? You don't want to pick polarizing topics. 41% of respondents consider volunteer work as valuable as paid work when evaluating candidates, according to a survey conducted by LinkedIn. Now I want to talk about cover letters with you. What is a cover letter? When should I use it? Do employers really want them? Well, 86% of executives polled said cover letters are valuable when evaluating job candidates. Why pass on a chance to sell yourself to an employer? Even if less than half the companies read it, there's a chance they will, so don't take the easy way out. Unless they explicitly say in the job posting, no cover letters, you should be writing one every time. Because a resume is great, but it's mostly just bullets and short statements. A cover letter will really help you to explain yourself a little bit more. So if you're an individual changing careers, here's where you can kind of explain yourself as to why you're changing careers. If you have a gap in employment on your resume that you couldn't really articulate why you have that gap on the resume, then talk about it in the cover letter. Cover letter tips. Here's a couple things. You want to limit the use of the word I. Sometimes when we ramble, we say, I did this, I did that, I can. Every cover letter I've ever gone through and proofread has too many I's in it. So make sure you read it out loud and count how many I's you have. Include facts about the company. We talked earlier about doing research for the company. You have to do this. And don't just go to their website and click the history button and read about, how the company was founded. Go on Twitter. Look at what they're doing in the community. Maybe there's some, maybe they do something, a fun run every year, a 5K. Find some sort of way you can connect with this company. Look them up on Glassdoor. Read reviews about them from past employees. You don't want to repeat your resume. You don't want to just use the same words over in the cover letter. You want to create a standalone document that is different from your resume. Cover letters can really help to explain those gaps like we talked about earlier. You want to include the requirements for the job. So in your cover letter, you can say something like, I see you're looking for an individual who has supervised a team of 10 or more people. Well, I've supervised a team of 7 people for the past 6 years, and I believe those skills will be a benefit to your company. So connect the dots for the reader. Make it real easy for them to understand that you are the best candidate. We can't stress this enough. Edit and proofread your cover letter. Don't send it out without having someone else look at it first. Here's what a cover letter layout looks like. You have your name, contact information at the top, the date, the employer's contact information. The first paragraph should include the information on why you're writing, mention the position you're applying for, include the name of the mutual contact if there is one. Be clear and concise regarding your requests. You want to let them know what your name is, what job you're applying for, how you heard about the job, so the reader has a point of reference. This is John, he's applying for the job of career planner, and you heard about the position on MI Talent Connect. Your next paragraph is going to be the meat and potatoes. You're going to talk about how you fit this position that they have posted. The last paragraph is simply a conclusion, thanking them for their time, opening it up for an interview, maybe giving them your phone number one more time. Here's an example of a completed cover letter. So you've got Joshua Job Seeker across the top, contact information, the address of the company, and then it goes right into information about them and why they're applying for the job. Cover letter versus a letter of interest. Letters of interest are very similar to cover letters. They're kind of like the cold calling in a sense. So what's the difference though? Well, a cover letter, you would write that for a position that has been posted out there online. A letter of interest is written when you know the company is hiring, but you don't know, they don't have an actual position online posted yet. We see a lot of individuals come through our doors who work in very niche type of career fields. And when we go online to find jobs for them, there's just nothing out there because every company has maybe one of these types of people. So they don't promote the job that much. They typically will hire from within. So what you need to do here is start a letter of interest campaign. I'll tell my job seekers, just go on Google. If you only work, your field of work, let's say, is in the chemical industry, then just search chemical type companies, paint, primer, all that type of stuff, and see what companies are out there in our area. And then go on LinkedIn, find the HR people, get a name. Maybe you have some mutual contacts who work there. Start a letter of interest campaign and drop these letters off. Walk in the door, shake the hand of the receptionist, hand it over. These are the types of things you can do to promote yourself for those jobs that are not formally posted online. They typically will look a lot like a cover letter, just talking about how you're going to be a good fit for the company. 80% of job openings are not publicized. That's a lot. 20% is what we actually have our hands on out there. 80% we don't ever even see. So that's where letters of interest can really be beneficial to you as a job seeker. Thank you letters. So what is a thank you letter? Do I have to write a thank you letter? It seems like more work. Yeah, it's more work, but it's not as much work as you think, and it goes a long way. So we would highly recommend using a thank you letter post-interview. It can help to move you to the top of the candidate field. If I interviewed 5 people and one person gave me thank you letters, I'm going to think a little bit more favorably about that individual who took the time to thank me for bringing them in for an interview. They're very easy to do. You can either type it up and send it in an email, or what I've heard a lot of people have success with are just buying those dollar store thank you cards and writing a thank you right there in the parking lot after the interview when everything's fresh in your mind, and then walking right back in the door and giving it to the receptionist. You want to make sure in these thank you letters you're adding why you are the best candidate one more time for them. Maybe you forgot something to mention in the interview. We've all been in interviews and walked out and thought, oh, I should have mentioned this or I should have mentioned that. Well, your thank you letter is your chance to get one more shot at it. So use those thank you letters. So 2 different ways you can send it, right? You can walk back in the door and do more of a personal handoff to the receptionist, or you can email it. My opinion is emails get lost. Emails don't always get read. I know when I get thank you letters from customers I've worked with, I hold on to those types of things. So I would handwrite a thank you letter right then and there. A couple more tips. Always want to send one. Everyone should get one. So if you were interviewed by 3 people, make sure all 3 people get one, because they're most likely going to talk to each other and say, oh, I got a thank you letter from so-and-so that we interviewed. And you don't want that one person to say, hey, I never got one. Helps to leave a lasting impression. You always want to tailor it to the reader. So if you had a specific topic you were discussing with one of the individuals in the interview, bring that topic back up in the thank you letter. Take notes during the interview. Many employers will allow this type of thing. You just ask at the beginning of the interview, is it okay if I take notes? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, no problem. Go ahead and take notes. Now is when you write everyone's name down who's in the interview, and you can start writing down important things that you want to mention later on in that thank you letter. So here's an example of a thank you letter. Again, the top looks just like all our other documents we've seen so far. First paragraph, you're just thanking them for their time for bringing you in, and the rest of the document is really touching on any important things you think would help promote you a little bit more in this position to help you move ahead of the pack. Moving on to references. What are references? They can provide accurate explanations of your capabilities. They help to validate your resumes. They're sometimes used as a supplement in the interview. Some tips when it comes to references. You always want to ask permission first. Don't just put someone down as a reference and don't let them know. The last thing you want is an employer calling your previous supervisor saying, hey, can you tell me a little bit about so-and-so? And they're caught off guard. You want to make sure they know that someone's going to be calling so they have some good information to present when that phone call comes. Use accurate information. If you know that your previous coworker never answers their email, then don't put their email down. Put their phone number. If they're a type of person who's going to pick up a phone more than send an email. What if the reference is retired or no longer works there? You can still absolutely use them. They worked with you, they can speak to your professional abilities. That's why we're using them as a reference. They don't have to still be employed in order to be used as a reference. You do, however, want to keep them professional. So no personal references on your reference page. Putting your mother down, your mother's going to speak glowingly about you no matter what. So you want to put down supervisors and coworkers only. Here's an example of what one looks like. The format is you have their name at the top, their title, the organization they work for, their address, phone number or email, and their relationship to you. Okay? There's a couple examples below there. Something you may have noticed as we've gone through this workshop is every document that I've presented to you has a similar look and feel. That's called branding. As a job seeker, all the documents that you send into an employer, you want to make sure they all match. You don't want different fonts and different colors. So all of the documents that I've showed you today all have that blue at the top with the job title underneath in gray with the contact information going left to right. That's branding. That's going to help you stand out from others. So when they get your cover letter, it's going to match your resume that comes in right afterwards. It's going to match your references that you're going to give to them in the interview. It's going to match that thank you letter that you walk in and give to them right after the interview. It's really going to help you stand out. All the information that I presented to you today are in our handouts on our website. So go back, print out the information, watch this workshop again, and take some notes. Macomb St. Clair Michigan Works is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So after this workshop today, please like, follow, connect, and subscribe. We have a ton of great information that we want to get out to you, the job seeker. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and good luck on finding your next career.